This week I've got The Aeronauts, which reunites Theory of Everything co-stars Eddie Redmayne and Felicity Jones. And Felicity Jones plays a balloon pilot. Yes, you heard that correctly, a balloon pilot. And Eddie Redmayne plays a meteorologist. You also heard that correctly, although he's a meteorologist before that term probably even existed. It takes place in the 1800s, and basically he commissions her to help him go on a meteorological discovery journey, and they want to break the vertical ascent, like how high you've gone in a balloon as a human record. It's just, again, the premise itself does not sound that exciting because it's not. And this film keeps trying to force you into thinking that things are exciting or things are perilous or things are stressful and the stakes are really high. And any film that tries to kind of force you that and keep reminding you of that by being like, oh no, the stakes are high, is not actually succeeding at it. It takes place in pretty cramped quarters, so there's really not a lot of room for, I think by making it, they thought they were being very creative by being cool, we'll constrain ourselves to this one very small set, and then anything we do otherwise will be impressive. But that's not the case. That doesn't just automatically make any other scene impressive. So you've got that storyline, and then they've it takes place in flashbacks telling how they met and their respective stories, and it all just kind of blurs together and not in a good way. The quote action of it is really not that exciting. They're both very good actors, so I'm not 100% sure what went wrong in terms of, is it the structure of the story? Is it the way they were directed? Is it, a variety of things. But either way, I was bored. I was like, when will this end? I found it quasi-predictable, and ultimately I didn't find their story compelling. So why should I care? Independent of the okay, we need to conduct science experiments. I don't think that is a barrier to entry, or okay, we need to break a record. I don't think those things are that boring inherently, but the way they were structured in this did not make me want to care about how any of it happened. So really, I think you can skip The Aeronauts. I'm only going to give it 2.5 out of 5. The other film I've got this week is called Dark Waters, and unfortunately it is based on a true story. It stars Mark Ruffalo, Anne Hathaway, Tim Robbins, Bill Camp, and Victor Garber. And Bill Camp, who, may I just say, has been just knocking it out of the park these last few years. I think he has been such a great underrated actor. But he plays a farmer in West Virginia who he's a cow farmer, and he discovers that something is very wrong with his cows. And he's neighbors with Mark Ruffalo's character's grandmother. Mark Ruffalo's playing a lawyer. And so he goes to him, he's like, hey, something's wrong. I need legal help because the Dupont Chemical Company has essentially been dumping waste into their water supply, which we find out later, really not a spoiler, because it's very obvious from the beginning that something's very, very wrong. May I take this moment to remind you that Flint doesn't really have clean water. Flint, Michigan doesn't have clean water. This movie starts in the 90s and goes through basically today. This is not a cool, these issues are solved. This is we are still dealing with things like this today, and we don't have the Mark Ruffalos of the world necessarily who are fighting on behalf of the Bill Camp characters, or the Mark Ruffalo's character fighting on behalf of the Bill Camp characters. So most of it is actually a legal drama of Mark Ruffalo suing the DuPont company on behalf of Bill Camp's character. Also, Mark Ruffalo's character was a lawyer for a chemical conglomerate. It's weird. He's already in the chemical industry somehow. And so it's lots of politics, lots of legal jargonese. But I think the first half of the movie, not quite so strong. The second half, once it starts to pick up momentum, once we kind of sort out, okay, he's actually involved in this, what do we do? That part, I think, was the stronger part for me. And then the ending, I think the ending was the most interesting part, but I think it tried to pace it and cram a bunch of it into it very, very quickly. So I wish it had almost been a little more evened out. But overall, it's weird. I found it interesting. I found it compelling. Again, Bill Camp's performance, I think, is amazing. Mark Ruffalo's performance is fine. He's just the good guy kind of. I've expressed before, I'm not a big Anne Hathaway fan. I actually didn't realize it was her for the first few scenes, which is a good thing. I am not so much frustrated with her performance in this. I'm frustrated with she's married to Mark Ruffalo's character. She's also a lawyer, and she just decides to become a homemaker. And I don't have a problem with the homemaker thing, right? But I have a problem with the expectation that female lawyers should become homemakers. And they actually kind of address that in the film. I'm that's a whole movie in and of itself. We were just going to gloss over this right here, but no, we're just going to, okay, all right. So I wish, and I'm guessing, it might be more true to the real people who were inspired this, that like, you know, she's just a supportive character, but she doesn't really have an arc. So it's kind of like, oh, okay, you're just here to play the supportive wife. I feel like I've seen a lot of those roles on screen lately. Can we please just write some depth to characters? I still enjoyed the film. It's a dark film. Get it? It's not fun to see, but I think it's relevant. I don't want to say important, but it's definitely relevant. It'll also set off a little bit of paranoia in you afterwards. That's maybe a healthy thing. Maybe a healthy thing in this case. So I'm actually going to give it 3.8 out of 5.